Thank you very much, Alina, for that introduction, and thank you very much for the invitation on behalf of Primary Site. So as you can see from the title slide, and Alina has just introduced, Primary Site were really keen to build on the contribution we'd made through a blog, to look at family learning and celebrate this month's topic, but in the context of digital citizenship, which of course is a theme that unites schools across the whole of the member states. I will apologise, on the title slide I've put 26th of May, it is of course the 26th of April. My apologies for any confusion caused, but I understand that this will also be being uploaded onto YouTube afterwards, so by all means please feel free to share that with people after the recording today. So that's what we're looking at. In terms of the next point of contact, just bear with me, just got a slight issue. Barry, could you just help with the slide, please? It doesn't seem to be.
The arrows to move the slide is in the left.
That's it, Alina. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Okay, so we have got a particular combination of reasons for getting involved in presenting this. First of all, it seems very appropriate in terms of me being asked to present this today, to actually say a very small amount about why I personally am representing Primary Site presenting this. So to say something of my profile, my identity, my avatar, to use digital terms, both online and offline. Online, if you look at my digital footprint, you would see that my background is very much rooted in education. My background is teaching. I worked for 9 years in local government as a family learning manager, and following that spent just under 2 years as the national policy lead for family learning in England and Wales for an organisation that was previously known as NIACE. Now, otherwise, if you look at my digital footprint offline, there are other perspectives that I am bringing to presenting this today, which we can't really separate from the theory and the case study examples that I have selected to share, because of course, as we know with everybody's digital identity, both those online and offline presences, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a student, whether you're a school leader, interplay with each other. So offline, I am a parent, I have 3 young children, and I have hobbies, and inevitably those influence the way in which I navigate and access information, and have shaped the examples that I've chosen today. So I think that's important to share that up front and bear in mind in a school setting how those online and offline identities will affect students, pupils in the schools that you are working with, and of course members of their families. Now, in terms of Primary Site, and you can see Primary Site's name in big letters above my head, Primary Site is a company that is based in England. However, we do cover the whole of the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland. And our purpose is to provide support for schools and academies, as many schools are now known in England, with their digital communication systems. So traditionally, when the company started about 14 years ago, the main business was school websites. And of course, many of us will daily be using, will be accessing school websites, but Primary Site's portfolio has rapidly expanded over the years to include text messaging services, a blogging platform, a podcasting platform that has been recently relaunched and updated and is now called the video sharing platform. And all sorts of opportunities are now emerging for ways in which those different functions can combine to really support schools with achieving their aspirations. So that is where our company is coming from. However, The real input today, of course, is sharing our knowledge and expertise and insight from very regular contact with schools and teachers and school leaders in terms of what those opportunities are for using that technology to enhance the school experience, to enhance community cohesion, homeschool communication, as Alina was mentioning. So I mentioned previously this concept of digital footprint. So when you look at digital footprint, I describe this really as an agent for change in itself. So when Primary Sight is looking at the digital footprint of schools that we work with, it's really, really crucial as part of the information that we use to include in conversations about how schools can achieve what they want to. So in terms of digital footprints, it allows us to contribute both at a local but also a policy level in order to improve educational experience. And our aim as a company is to become a one-stop shop for digital communications for schools. So hopefully that explains the context for why Primary Sight is presenting this webinar today. And in terms of the aims of this webinar, it is to highlight examples of how the power of communication tools can be harnessed by schools to maximise the positive impact on teaching and learning, as well as improve that homeschool communication. And the webinar is split into 3 sections. First of all, research evidence. Secondly, case studies. And thirdly, questions and answers. And of course, that third section, the questions and answers, are as important, if not more important, than the input I will give before, because of course this is where we actually share experiences and share ideas and look at opportunities for the future. I can see in the chat box many people joining us from around Europe. You are very welcome. Just in terms of the flow of the webinar, if somebody really would like to ask a question, because of course I do welcome the interaction, by all means, please raise your hand. There is a button at the top of the screen that has somebody raising their hand. If you really would like to get my attention, if you're struggling to hear me, please raise your hand and I will certainly look out for that. The chat box is a little more tricky for me to keep an eye on, just in terms of the flow of the presentation, but I will do my best. So, unless there are any objections, I will go into the webinar proper. Is everybody okay? Yeah, nobody's saying they're not on the chat? Okay, thank you, Christian, wonderful. Okay, great, Borka, thank you. Many thanks, Angela, great. Okay, so let's get into the real detail then. So I've mentioned about Primary Sight's focus on schools, and to be really clear throughout this webinar, when I refer to schools, this is Primary Sight referring to all types of schools across Europe, and including in England, and I'm sure that there are some members joining us from England as well. The concept of schools for this webinar would also include academies. Now, I'm not going to take time up in this webinar to go into the difference in England between a school and an academy, but there will be contact details at the end of the webinar, so if anybody would like to discuss this in more detail with me, please make contact. So, family learning, what is it? Or more crucially, what is it not? And I personally have found that discussing what family learning is not is actually more revealing and important on occasions than saying what it is. What I refer to here, at the bottom of this slide, you can see a definition of family learning that is taken from an 18-month public inquiry that was led by an organisation previously called NIACE, and it was the Family Learning Works report. So you can see there that family learning was defined as referring to any learning activity that involves both children and adult family members, where learning outcomes are intended for both and that contributes to a culture of learning in the family. Now, crucially, that definition does not mean that family learning activity has to have both adults and children present. You can, of course, have adult learning activity where parents are learning on their own, but perhaps have a focus on supporting with homework, or, for example, adoptive parents who may have particular themes they wish to discuss communally in terms of supporting their children. So the key thing, according to that definition, is that there are clear learning outcomes for both the parents or carers and the children as a result of that activity that takes place. So that has been the given consensus about what family learning is. Now, in terms of what it isn't, this is where many conversations I have had with schools across Europe, actually, over several years, has indicated very different understandings of whether people are offering family learning opportunities or not. So many schools over the years I've supported, liaised with, have said, well, we offer coffee mornings. So we do parental engagement's family learning. No. Two things. Parental engagement is not exclusively family learning. They are related, but they are not the same. And even if they were the same, the coffee morning approach is not something, unless I've never seen a coffee morning that delivers the kind of learning outcomes that that definition just alluded to, it's not something generally that would be focused on there being very clear learning outcomes for those who attend. So if you think about a coffee morning, generally speaking, you wouldn't have people turning up and saying, by the time I leave this coffee morning, I will know this that I didn't know before I came. Or as a result of attending this coffee morning, I will be able to identify. You get the idea. So that is really, really important as a starting point for this webinar in terms of recognising what family learning is defined as, but also in terms of your own local context, or if you visit places, actually having a very critical eye as to, is this family learning or is it something else? And if you'd like to read more about the difference and similarities, and including the coffee morning example that I've just given, you can visit the link given here on the slide for the blog via the School Education Gateway. Now, moving on in terms of the European context, in a way, really, although much of my experience with family learning has been in England and Wales, my experience back in October last year, where I presented a keynote speech at the European Conference in Luxembourg, which was Family Learning Best Practices Across Europe, it was very apparent how much shared experience there was across the member states, and how many teachers were in attendance and actually said many of the same things that teachers that I was having contact with in England and Wales were telling me. So again, I've put a link there for people who are interested. The link on the penultimate bullet point, where you can see the breakdown, the key findings from that European conference on family learning that took place in Luxembourg. So let's move on to the next slide. So again, please bear in mind, yes, I am Education Strategist for Primary Site. Yes, Primary Site is a corporation. But beneath all of this, around family learning and around digital citizenship, is the fact that we are all human. We are users of the technologies, but fundamentally we are human, and that is a really important thing to bear in mind. Here's me with my 3 kids that I regularly have conversations with about technology use. There we are, taking a selfie. We're growing up in a selfie culture, for ill or for better, And again, with family learning, it's really important, I think, to have at the heart of the family learning we offer respect for the different backgrounds families are coming from. With my children, I happen to model a lot of use of technology, whether it is selfies, whether it's using YouTube, whatever. And yet within a family learning group, you could have any number of different approaches for different families. And the real skill of that family learning tutor, from a digital perspective as well, will also be to make the curriculum responsive to that variation, make that learning individualised, and still move those learners on to where they want to get to and where they need to get to in terms of their life aspirations. Because ultimately that's what all of this is about, surely, isn't it? About improving quality of life for everybody involved. So hold that thought. We're talking about technology, but we are human. Okay, so in terms of actually explaining the infrastructure, in terms of my experience of family learning, it seems very natural to share that in the context of England. And of course, through my role at Primary Site, all the time when we're having contact with schools, this is part of the backdrop. We may be talking with school staff, but many of these schools are actually hosting family learning provision from providers coming in, very often from a team in the local council, or it might be an independent training provider. Oh, that's really nice. Okay, nice, sweet, true. Loving the comments on the chat box. Thank you. So, yeah, without kind of losing the really, touchy-feely side of the conversation, we do need to pay attention to the funding infrastructure, because again, there was a massive part of the conversation in Luxembourg last October in terms of, okay, we want to do this, we want to make this happen, but actually we need some resource behind this. Now, we have been massively lucky in England. There is such a rich history in England of family learning provision, family learning delivery, and I actually happen to think that it is underestimated in the rest of the world. There are many examples, for example, from the United States of America, from Australasia. There are some brilliant examples of family learning too. But actually, in terms of the infrastructure in England, we have a very mature infrastructure, in my view. So there on the diagram, you can see this is a schematic that outlines very basically how family learning funding has worked to date in England. So there at the heart, we have family learning, and I'll start at the top and work clockwise, going around the different circles to explain what these acronyms, what these terms stand for, but also what that might look like in a school classroom, or in a school playground, or in a forest where somebody's decided to deliver family learning to support with outdoor learning or environmental play. So in the top circle, we have there FEML, which is Family, English, Maths and Language. Now, FEML and the next one to the right, Wider Family Learning, sometimes known as WAFL or WFL, both those traditionally have been funded in England by a really important government department called BIS, B-I-S, and that stands for the Department of Business, Innovation and Skills. So that is a governmental department where they have had budget dedicated to supporting providers of adult learning. That's the route traditionally through which family learning has been offered, to provide these courses to parents and children. So FEML at the top, the thing that would make a FEML course would be whether it was adults on their own or adults with children. The key thing is that the core learning outcomes are focused on improving English, maths or language skills. So if you think about a school environment and think about curriculum and think about learning outcomes, this would be where you would have a very clear focus on improving learning outcomes and performance for English, maths, and/or language. Okay, so that is how people have been allowed to categorise a course as FEML traditionally. So then the circle on the right, wider family learning. Wider family learning has traditionally come from the same funding pot, but wider family learning can again either be adult only or joint with the children. But the learning outcomes at the heart of that provision do not have to be focused specifically on supporting English, maths, and/or language. So, for example, you may have a wider family learning programme that could be a family mural making course. So, for example, over 6 weeks, groups of 10 families from disadvantaged backgrounds coming together, designing, creating, making a lovely picture on a wall in a public area, in a community. The idea being that they would perhaps build their communication and bonding skills with their children. They would have a better sense of connection with their local community, perhaps. Perhaps they would feel more involved with the school. So already we start getting into very, very important conversations regarding hard outcomes as opposed to soft outcomes in terms of the impact of family learning. So at the bottom, FLIF, this stood for Family Learning Impact Fund. And this was several years ago now, but this was funded by another very important government department in England called DFE. And DFE stands for the Department for Education. Now, this was money that was made available for the first time, really, to focus family learning provision and techniques and approaches on identifying families that were considered to be at risk. So there were a number of different categories that would mean families could be viewed to be at risk, perhaps not being able to afford food and clothing, perhaps being homeless, a variety of different things. So that work was really, really influential in terms of the family learning work in England. And there is still information on the internet about that. So if you type in FLIF and family learning into Google, I'm confident information will come up about that. And then on the left, the last circle here, which is equally where I see big opportunities for developing digital citizenship and using the kind of digital communication solutions that certainly Primary Sight look at day on day, is homegrown family learning. So this is family learning that perhaps schools feel they wish to design, develop, deliver, evaluate themselves. They feel they have the skills, the capacity, the expertise and the resources within a school to deliver their own programme. Maybe some of you joining in today do this already. I'll be really interested in the questions and answers to hear more about this. So that gives an overview in terms of the infrastructure in England. So here we now move on to the research evidence on family learning. So this particular graph is from a BIS research paper, which is focused on further education and skills to social mobility. So I mentioned BIS earlier, BIS, the Department for Business Innovation and Skills, and this is particularly focusing on the confidence of adults to help their children with schoolwork. So at Primary Sight, when we're liaising with schools about their parental engagement, are they using family learning perhaps to support parental engagement, one of the factors, of course, that we recognise is really important very often to schools is, do schools feel that they are able to share, are they able to communicate with those significant family members in a child or young person's life effectively to enable them to support that child as much as they can in terms of their schoolwork, but also in terms of emotional issues perhaps they're going to access to services, a variety of things. So you can see here from this research from Harding et al. In 2014 that they've separated out different curriculum areas, so reading, writing, maths and other subjects. So you can see here that actually people being interviewed were asked about how participating in family learning contributed to their confidence with supporting their children with their schoolwork. And you can see there that just under half of those interviewed reported feeling more confident with supporting with reading and only marginally less with writing. So again, if you transpose that feedback onto the type of work you're involved with, on work that's happening in schools, reflecting on your own engagement with parents and carers, that is well worth considering, really. Can I just check, is everybody with me? Is everybody okay? Let me know if there's a problem in the chat box. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Alina and Ivana. Brilliant. Okay, so we'll continue with the research work. So from this same research project, there were some really important key findings, which I am confident from the discussions I had in Luxembourg are not limited to England. So first of all, the direct and indirect benefits of family learning are broad and varied. And that is one of the factors, of course, that makes it a very, very difficult phenomenon to measure. But of course, we actually have an opportunity, we have more of an opportunity than ever through use of digital communications, not least web analytics, for example, to actually really focus in on how those benefits are happening and how they are being measured. That is wonderful, Aida. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing that quite right. I'm really glad that you're finding that useful. And the matter of civic education is going to be explored further in the webinar too. So thank you for that feedback. Okay, so the second point from the research was that there seemed to be, welcome Suela from Albania, there seemed to be an observable link between adult learning and the early years development of learners' children. And there was also a strong intergenerational correlation between a parent and a child's cognitive ability. So again, this is really just confirming what I feel many of us working in education know already. We know from working with families that we can have a very transformational effect on the quality of access to education and learning and on quality of life. But there seems to be something very specific there around early intervention in the early years, and to the point in the United Kingdom where a couple of weeks ago Save the Children, which of course has an international reputation, and I met with somebody out in Northern Ireland last week to discuss the report. They issued findings about the impact on brain development in the early years and have requested that an early years teacher is made available in every nursery environment. So another example that that Primary Site has come across of this is through both the PEAP, the Peers Early Educational Partnership Programme, which is for children from birth to age 3, and also the REAL initiative, Raising Early Achievement in Literacy. So to give an example, a school in Northern England called Oasis Academy Limeside are very committed to the REAL project, and the National Children's Bureau, a national charity, have been rolling out this very established programme with funding from the Department for Education. And Oasis Academy Limeside now have a unit in the school for 2-year-olds, and they make sure that they actually incorporate home visiting into the work that they are doing, which is fantastic practice. And the principal's view is that that is definitely contributing to closing the gap in educational attainment by the time the children are getting older and are being tested. So, you know, that's a really great example of early years intervention. Aida, in terms of posting the materials, I'm sure I can liaise with Alina afterwards for resources to be shared. I'm sure the presentation will be available as well as the webinar recording. Okay, so back to the slide. In terms of the third bullet point, the effect of adult learning appears to make the largest contribution to the early years development of children, with the impact decreasing as the child gets older. Now, to be honest with you, I'm not too sure about this one. The research says this. I'm sure that the research must be right and I must be wrong. However, with experience in family learning, I know that there are some amazing models of family learning that are very established, that actually really can save families' lives when children are in their teens. So one example I can give that is very resource intensive, but is very, very high impact and involves many stakeholders often working across departments for integrated working, is a programme called Strengthening Families. And Strengthening Families is one of the programmes that is what they call an evidence-based programme. And significantly, on the last point on this slide, evaluations of some family learning programmes have found that they make the largest contribution to learners from disadvantaged groups, which of course we know in terms of digital citizenship, and certainly looking at use of digital communications by schools and digital communications supporting homeschool communications, may be an issue for many people in terms of accessing the actual technology, let alone the skills that are required to use this technology ethically and as an active citizen. So again, I won't go through every one of these bullet points. The presentation will be available. But this idea that research shows that family learning supports confidence and collaboration. So all of those points there in terms of the particular groups that it was found were particularly positively influenced by, affected by engaging in family learning courses, it really shows that it's not just about taking part in the courses. Collaborative working, improved confidence, these are life skills. This is about equipping the children and young people in our schools, as well as raising aspirations for their family members to be more equipped to be active citizens. And of course, across the whole of Europe, that's a really important aim, isn't it? Okay. And again, without going through every example, I've tried to give you information here, so if you wish to follow up, you have got that option. Really important, not just that we're talking about what I referred to as hard versus soft outcomes earlier. So by a hard outcome, I might refer to achieving a qualification in English. A soft outcome may be that a 4-year-old feels safer with the mother in a home environment, and you can obviously quantify that, but actually what's really noticeable from the research on family learning is that very often you get very many outcomes in terms of impact. So if you are actually looking in your school or in your department or in your country for a really cross-cutting way of supporting different types of goals, so family learning is a typical one, for example. It's got a really important role to play in terms of digital inclusion, because family learning, where people have got access to the equipment, where they have the skills to actually access the information, that can be really powerful and transformational for families. So you have here information about a family literacy research project. You have information here from Sheffield City Council in England, where they did some research showing family learning closing the gap in educational attainment by up to as much as 15 percentage points for those from disadvantaged groups, which is huge, the equivalent of 6 months of reading age progress, which is just massive, really. And there is an organisation called FLAG, which is the Family Learning Local Authority Group in England, who have carried out some more longitudinal research into the type of multiple outcomes you get. Milena, that's very interesting that you don't have family learning in Macedonia. I would be very interested following the webinar to follow up on a conversation with you about that. So by all means, make contact, won't you please? So really interesting as well to flag up organisations that are also concerned in England with capturing this impact, because at the end of the day, if we cannot demonstrate the impact, the added value from offering this activity before we even start looking at digital citizenship or use of digital technologies, it's going to not really be taken as much on board by decision makers and practitioners and users, of course, as we need it to. So thinking about in England, other key influencers are the National Family Learning Forum. So that is a grouping of people that are concerned with promoting family learning at a policy level. There is also the Campaign for Learning, and they are a national organisation that oversee an annual national event called the Family Learning Festival. So you can start to feel that in England we really are blessed with having a very diverse but quite coherent infrastructure for family learning, and many practitioners that are very passionate about investing in the work, making the work high quality, and crucially working in partnership. And Primary Site has certainly been really reaching out to these stakeholders to work in partnership with them. It's worth mentioning that in Scotland there is a very strong commitment to family learning related to the concept of community learning. In Wales, their inspectors from an organisation called Estyn now require schools to demonstrate how they are approaching parental engagement. So they actually have a parental engagement toolkit. And looking at a European level, there is a website called IPALE, which is the European Platform for Adult Learning in Europe. And again, there are some really useful blogs and information on there. If you would like to check those out, I would encourage you to do so. Okay, so looking now at a slightly different angle for the research evidence, and that is in terms of digital citizenship. So I'm not forgetting family learning at this stage in the webinar. However, we did agree, of course, that we would be looking at family learning in the context of digital citizenship. And if there's one thing I've discovered over the years while I've been studying digital citizenship, is that, as with family learning, there is a lot of confusion or different views of what that actually means. So my interest in digital citizenship really arose from my master's degree dissertation being in e-learning and motivational aspects of e-learning. And in terms of digital citizenship, I think it's fair enough to say, even though there is some amazing literature out there, there have been some fabulous events already around this. In terms of a concept, it's relatively new. It's an emerging area in that in the past the focus has tended to be much more on using digital communications or using digital techniques in schools in terms of limiting the content or stopping people accessing things to protect the children, and rightly so, absolutely. Of course, Primary Site really want to make sure that anybody using the technology is not exposed to content that is damaging or harmful to them. But at the same time, we all know we are living in society where we cannot escape from social media, really. Even if we are not daily users of social media, we pick up cues from environmental print about this. That's a real term. And so really, Primary Sight's view of digital citizenship is, okay, so there's a long history of schools working with digital to limit the access to content, making sure firewalls in schools are secure, making sure that children are not seeing inappropriate content. But actually, Primary Sight also thinks we all have a role to play in empowering our students. And in empowering our students and also reaching out to the wider family through family learning, through positive communications with families and local communities, we all have to help each other to look after each other in that digital environment. So in terms of digital citizenship, a definition that I have found to be the most accessible is one from a guy called Mike Ribble, who I came across on LinkedIn. And I've provided the link there for what he has identified as 9 elements of digital citizenship. So Mike Ribble's definition is that digital citizenship can be defined as the norms of appropriate, responsible behaviour with regard to technology use. Now, all of us working in education know we could spend all day unpicking that sentence and discuss and debate what that actually means in a classroom when you've got 30 children that are all wanting different things, or how you manage that. But that is the starting point that I have selected for the discussion this afternoon. Can I invite at this stage, please, if anybody disagrees with that particularly, to share their views? If not, it's fine in the questions and answers. If everybody's feeling comfortable, Milena has got a contribution to make. Okay. Right, I'm hoping this is sounding okay. Okay, so just while Milena is finishing typing, so one of the things that I've been really excited about when learning about digital citizenship have been the range of amazing podcasts that are available now around the concept of digital citizenship. So there, which I hope is helpful to people, is a summary in terms of what I've been particularly impressed with when I've been downloading podcasts from the iTunes store. So one podcast that I subscribe to, which I think is excellent, is the Social Media Show. And if you actually look through their listings, there is a brilliant account of an event called the Digital Citizenship Summit. And this has been overseen by 2 absolute key players in the digital citizenship arena, one being Mary-Alice BFX Curran and the other being David Ryan Polgar. So I'm really hoping after today's webinar, actually, we can perhaps have a transatlantic conversation with them in terms of where we're coming from a European perspective in terms of digital citizenship and digital communications, and the work that they've been carrying out. Thank you, Milena. So Milena agrees that students should know how to become digitally educated. So that's wonderful. Thank you, and looking forward to exploring that more in the questions and answers. So I've put there that David Ryan Polgar, who is cited in many places regarding digital citizenship, is sometimes known as a tech ethicist. So this idea of somebody being a tech ethicist, I wonder whether, is this something through family learning that could be achievable or aspirational for all kids in our schools? That through becoming more educated as digital citizens, more confident in their home learning environment being set up to support that digital citizenship, whether it's supporting them with learning ethically on their lifelong learning journey. So there are definite links to family learning there. Okay, so no problem at all, Valentina, you're very welcome. Okay, so in terms of the 9 elements I had flagged up using that definition from Mike Ribble of digital citizenship, there is what I consider to be an absolutely brilliant poster that is available for download for free from a company called Fractus Learning, and I've actually done a little screenshot there for you of these 9 elements of digital citizenship. Now, I'll go through briefly some of those in a moment, but it's really important, I think, if we're talking about family learning, if we're talking about activity that has got learning outcomes for adults and children, first of all, we have to think about what are the digital elements of that, what are the practicalities of that in terms of resource, in terms of expense, in terms of reliable internet connectivity, in terms of e-safety. But beyond that, the hardware issues, there are what I consider the software issues of digital citizenship. And those software issues are those soft skills that we possess as humans to intelligently and ethically use that technology. So, going through the poster I've provided there are particular elements that I think are especially relevant to family learning. So I've mentioned there about digital access. So this idea of full electronic participation in society, this is something that I know certainly an ex-colleague of mine who is an expert in all things digital, Kevin Campbell-Wright his name is, we've debated this extensively because he's also got a perspective as a school governor, as well as having worked on digital learning projects over the years. And we know that that in spite of changes in the hardware, there are still underlying issues around digital access, and that could be for any number of reasons. It might not be hardware related. It might be the fact that somebody does not have the communication skills, the reading skills even, to actually access what they need to get set up in the first place. So we really are working at that kind of level. And of course those issues are also things that are going to affect you as schools in terms of being able to support families and communicate with them at home. You know, as opposed to just sending a letter out, can the families actually read that letter? If everything goes online, what steps are you going to take as a school to make sure that that correspondence is accessible to those families? So the idea of digital communication and the electronic exchange of information, that is Primary Sight's core business, so we're concerned with that every day. But equally important, we recognise that teachers and schools, although there are many excellent examples of where digital literacy skills are being supported, that actually the really pressing issue now seems to be around digital etiquette. Do users of these technologies, particularly if we're talking in a school environment or working in a family learning environment where actually there could be some very sensitive issues being discussed, how do people navigate that? Do they have the skills? Do they have the understanding? Do they have the emotional intelligence to actually navigate that? So I'll leave that with you as food for thought, certainly until the questions. On the bottom row, digital rights and responsibilities. This idea that actually it is an entitlement, arguably, to use this technology, but that phrase, with great power comes great responsibility. And actually, even if families and pupils in our schools have the skills to use this, that they do not feel locked into this as a way of life. That one of their rights as a digital citizen is to step back from that if they feel uncomfortable. to recognise, for example, that unfriending somebody on a social network will potentially have an emotional impact on that other user, but actually that if it is making them feel uncomfortable, that they are not locked into this virtual world in which they have no say. And I think that is a really crucial contribution for educators to make, and Primary Site really want to be part of this whole debate. And of course, as you would expect for us as a tech company, digital security, you know, making sure that those servers are both reliable to ensure continuity of access and learning, but also that they are secure in terms of information not falling into the wrong hands. So I'm hoping this is a helpful overview for people. Has anybody come across this before? I'm not sure whether anybody has come across it. No, it was new to me too. Okay, so again, just to share with you from a European context point of view, there's there a link to a blog on the School Education Gateway, which is showing that in a 2014 survey on digital inclusion and skills in the European Union, that up to 47% of the European population had insufficient digital competence, and 23% of those had no digital competence at all. And I've flagged up there the 5 elements that are included of what's called the European Digital Competence Framework for Citizens. So, Milena, people usually know their rights but don't know their wrongs using electronic communication. Absolutely, I completely agree with you. And I think really family learning is an ideal vehicle to support families with having a shared understanding of that and talking openly about it. Okay, so again, in terms of research on digital citizenship, again, looking at school education and the use of ICT, information communications technologies, there was a European Commission study in 2013 that looked at data from 31 European countries. And this has got implications for staff, for governors, in terms of their own skills and also in terms of access from children, young people and families. Now there, on the second bullet point, I've highlighted the 3 key findings. Apologies about that, the formatting on one slide seems to have gone a bit strange, so sorry about that. But what you can really see from that is that all of the research there shows that this is a really crucial thing for us to be doing in schools. Absolutely no doubt. And yet there are so many barriers that people are reporting, and it is a Europe-wide issue. So what I'd really like to do is move on to the next section in the webinar before we have questions and answers. And these are case study examples from our own portfolio at Primary Site, products that we have designed, but they are ones that particularly schools wanted to highlight and share with us because they reported finding the digital communications platform being so valuable to them in how they have been transforming as a school, both in terms of the culture of the school, but also the day-to-day operations. So there are 4 examples now of this. Okay, so this first one, this is from London in England. This is Walker Primary School, and not only have I given a screenshot of the front page on the website there that Primary Site designed, I've given the website address itself, and I've chosen at the bottom of each of these case studies to summarise what I think are the key points for family learning and digital citizenship by using hashtags. Because again, this is the different way many people are reading now, isn't it? You know, actually, I could have said, we'll send you 4 big pages with case studies. For me, when I looked at Walker Primary School, it was the fact that they had actually embraced the opportunity to redesign their school website, to actually put pupils in the driving seat. So in terms of their digital literacy, in terms of their entrepreneurial skills, their employability skills, they were positioning pupils as leaders in shaping that digital presence, that shop window to the world. So actually pupils have taken over the blog, It's been researcher-led, it's been target-driven, it's been intended to attract pupils and parents, which of course is absolutely crucial in terms of a family learning approach, and also celebrating the success with this stuff. Because again, very often in primary sites experience, the compliance aspects are ever so important, very, very important. But of course, it's so much more than that. And family learning, by using digital techniques and incorporating digital approaches into the curriculum, are a great way of actually linking families in with the school. So perhaps as part of your family learning programme, you may want to actually not only signpost people to the school website, but actually you might have activities on there. Or with the video sharing platform, for example, that Primary Site offers, there could be maybe some exchange of videos there that could then form part of a topic discussion in the classroom. All those kinds of opportunities. So this is a second case study. This is Cars Glen Primary School in Belfast in Northern Ireland, and particularly important with this case study example was that there was a very strong focus on giving information well to parents, to the website being very responsive and relevant to them locally, and again, as with the previous case study, to treating children as equal partners in shaping that digital presence. So I hope everybody's okay with these. Looking forward to the questions too. So the third case study is from Summerfield Primary School in Birmingham in England. So there at the hashtags at the bottom, you can see that that particular school found it really important that their avatars, that their illustration, even though it's drawn, was actually representing their real world. And we've got a team of designers that work very hard here to ensure that that can be delivered by recreating that from photographs. But if you think about the kind of curriculum activities that are possible from that kind of approach, you know, the possibilities are endless. And you'll notice on the lower left of that front page that Primary Site also offers the Google Translate function, because one of the things we've not discussed so far in the webinar is that of new arrival families, or those families where they are living in a country where they do not speak the native language confidently. And of course, family learning is a great vehicle for that too, in terms of the language learning. But that's a whole other webinar, I think. And finally, case study 4 is from Southwood Primary School in Greater London, and I really was impressed. I found it very refreshing to see the information about children having a great time. Thank goodness. People are still thinking about children having a great time in these ages where there's so much testing and talk of standards, and that is all so important. But again, if we think how long children spend in school, and with family learning, if we think about all those parents and carers who every time they see their children are affected by how happy their children are at school and whether their children are enjoying going to school in the morning, that is a really important aspect, surely, of family learning and digital citizenship. So Primary Site is very keen to celebrate that with schools as well. And looking at digital routes for technology, whether it's through the website, whether it's through a text messaging service, it's really crucial that parents and carers see that as a hub of information for them, that they are the end user. The end user is not the person in a school editing a website. The end user is the mum standing at the bus stop with the child next to her, trying to get her attention. It's a notice board, really, facing outwards to the community. And increasingly with social media feeds, we know behaviour patterns are changing of parents and carers. So really, digital is moving as fast as it ever was. but actually we have a real opportunity through family learning and digital citizenship to address these themes and help each other out really across member states too. Okay, so we're now on to the third section of the webinar, which is around questions and answers. So I hope that's okay, Alina. I think that hopefully that works for you. There was one bullet point that I didn't put on the bottom of this, and I should have. So I'm really interested to hear what stands out for you as an opportunity for the future from the discussion and the chat comments we've had so far. What might make it difficult to achieve this opportunity, and also C, I would have put any other thoughts. And Alina, at this stage, if it's okay with you as moderator, I'll stop talking now. I'm really keen to listen from other participants and any questions that they have got, and looking forward to the debate. So as long as you want to keep that going. And yeah, thank you very much for everybody's attention too. At the end of the webinar, I will put up the contact details slide so people can contact me if they wish to. Are you there, Alina? Okay, so for some reason I can't quite hear Alina at the moment. That's okay, no problem. So what I'll do is I'll start picking up the comments that people are sharing on chat, if everybody's okay with that. So Christian has commented, digital life, indeed, absolutely, and now from the cradle to the grave, it appears. And Milena has commented, of course, already about people usually knowing their rights but not their wrongs using electronic communications, but also that parents expect results only, that they are not interested to participate. So, Milena, I'm very interested, I'm sure some other participants would be as well. What experience do you have of this? If this is something that you actually want to share more information about, that would be very interesting. You're welcome, Diego. So Zenia is saying, parents, headmaster, infrastructure. Yeah, absolutely, all really important players. Yeah, so Valentina, so that's interesting that you agree with Milena. So again, Valentina, I'd be very interested to hear about what kind of experiences you have had in terms of feeling like parents are interested in just the results rather than actually getting involved. So I can see Valentina is, yeah, typing, and Burka also agrees. So this does seem to be an issue, doesn't it, across member states too? And I won't pretend that it's a new thing to me. I mean, it's something that in England as well, you know, it's often said. Well, I mean, I remember when I started managing family learning, one of the first jobs I was given was to go to what's called a children's centre in England. So this is a community centre where parents used to bring their younger children. And some family learning we were offering, literally the parents were coming with the prams, with the children in the prams, taking the children out of the prams, sitting the children on the floor, and either going and leaving thinking that the children were going to be looked after, or forming a line at the back of the room and everybody drinking coffee. So the first job I was given was to make it really clear in a nice but firm way, look, this is not about just leaving your child. Everybody needs a break sometimes, but if you are bringing your child to this session, it's really important you get involved. So Borka, parents just can't make enough effort, it seems. Okay, so Valentina, I hope this is okay, me reading out these comments. It seems the best way to do this. There's an electronic grade book for parents, but they just want the short versions of it. SMS, they don't want to get the grade book page to check out what children are learning, what they have for homework, etc. Maybe they work too much. Interesting, Borka, as a working mum as well, you know, I relate to that. Marina, parents should pay more attention to their children. Okay, that kind of That kind of fits with what I was just saying, but again, I think it's really important with family learning that we really unpick if parents are not paying as much attention to their children. Why is that? What underlying reasons could there be? So Valentina, the only thing they comment on is the grade. Yeah, I do agree that there seem to be many parents where that does seem to be the key driver. And as a family learning community and as digital citizens, I'm not sure quite how we get around that, but interested in people's view. So Christian, you must have time for children. And family learning is a really powerful tool for that, because very often at the start of a family learning programme, it might be that parents themselves never had any attention, or they never really learned to play properly because nobody taught them those techniques. So Milena, parents do not learn along with the children but their work, or are not interested at all, and Christian is agreeing. Valentina, I believe there should be few learning events in every school to promote to involve parents. Yes, and it might be of interest to know that the link through to me being involved with this work was through family learning being factored into a piece of work the European Commission did around preventing early school leaving, and that was through work that was contributed through the previous organisation NIACE, which is now known as the Learning and Work Institute. So yes, absolutely. Through that agenda, preventing early school leaving, that definitely is very important. Borko, parents are bent on providing for their kids rather than investing in their future. Okay, so I'd be interested to know your thoughts for why that might be, if that is the case. Valentina, but when it's organised at school, then parents usually have no time. Okay, so again, what kind of strategies can we all use around this? Digital could be massively powerful for this, couldn't it? So if parents can't come into the school because they have no time, let's make stuff available to them online in ways that they can access, using the devices and using the technology that they can access when they can access it. And that's over and above offering family learning in different venues, or instead of having a class every week, maybe having a residential over a weekend, which I always found very effective in terms of engaging fathers, particularly working fathers. Anna, welcome. I agree that parents themselves should be taught how to be part of that learning. They should be interested. Again, family learning is great for that. Valentina, there should be a parents' form of e-twinning. What an interesting idea, Valentina. Interested to pick that up afterwards. Burka, I brought everything to them, only 32% came on board. Yep, unfortunately, Burka, that seems very familiar. Again, some work that I was involved with regarding Roma families. It was a project I only got involved with late in the day due to timings of me starting my job and what have you. But it really was very interesting across various member states, the kind of feedback people were getting in terms of the cultural issues for why families were not turning up to family learning, even when they had incentives, even when in some cases they were being paid to attend. So coming back to the point made before, you know, why is that? You know, why would it be that parents would not seem to dedicate as much time to investing in that child's learning? So I can see another comment being typed. It's good discussion, everybody. Keep it coming. It's really good. And at some point, I think Alina is going to stop us. I think if not, then I'll stop us at 3:30. Oh, there's more. Okay. Oh, multiple attendees are typing. Okay, we've got some really great debate going now. It's got 19 minutes left on the discussion. Please do. Thank you, Alina. Okay, great. Lots and lots of important points people are raising here. And if people are feeling comfortable with the way we're approaching this questions and answer session, would you please indicate on the chat whether you're okay or whether it's causing a problem, if you want to do it a different way. Okay, Burkos, so when I ask them for a reason, they say they work really hard to make ends meet. Well, again, you know, absolutely. I see this in England. You know, you get some people, some parents that feel they have to buy lots and lots of textbooks and workbooks and the most expensive toys. And one of the things family learning is really powerful at doing, even if we can only get parents along for one session, is to show them, especially with digital, how things can be reused, how things are cheap or free for them to access. Valentina, it's interesting that usual parents' response is that children work at school so that children don't have to work at home. Yes, and additionally, one thing that I haven't mentioned, which is really important in terms of primary sites education strategy, and I know I mentioned Sheffield City Council, they are very, very proactive with this, is the concept of the flipped classroom. And of course, the concept of the flipped classroom is that actually by using technology, you are completely turning the educational process on its head. So the idea is that the learning itself takes place outside the classroom, and then the children come to school to basically reinforce that learning. So instead of seeing the learning as happening in the classroom and then perhaps being reinforced outside of the classroom, that it's the other way around. So that's a whole new challenge with the flipped learning as well. And you know, not to mention in terms of parents not being able to see the connections, for example, with digital citizenship and STEM, the science, technology, engineering, math skills, coding skills, all of these really crucial skills that children we know are increasingly being expected to have as they go into the working world. So Valentina, I believe that's just a deflecting symptom. Yep, probably right. Claudia, welcome. Parents often do not have time. Yeah, so one of the things I'm interested in, this is cropping up quite a lot, this idea of parents claiming to not have time, to not have money, and I certainly can believe that both of those things are true in many cases. I've worked with many families where there have been those barriers. So what can we do? What can we do as an education community, do you think, through offering family learning and or using digital communication solutions to overcome these issues? So Milena says, I think that parents do not understand why skills are needed for students' futures. Absolutely, yes. So again, how can we actually use family learning? How can we use digital communications to convey these messages, to explain to parents and carers why those skills are important for students' future? Borka, I don't know what else to do. Okay, and well, Borka, in that case, I mean, certainly I would like to extend the offer after the webinar. I'll put my contact details up. In fact, I'll do that now so that people have got the opportunity to get those down. If there are specific things that you really are kind of struggling with, that you're thinking, how could I use digital communications to really support, to improve this engagement, you might have some very, very complex challenges there to do that, but absolutely happy to pick up a conversation with you about that afterwards. So Marina is agreeing with Milena that she doesn't think parents understand why skills are needed for the students' future. No problem, Borka, that's fine. I look forward to hearing from you. And Valentina is making another contribution. I've got 4 people. Wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for being so involved. I appreciate it. Okay, so on the other hand, I know for a fact there are teachers that went to have parents interfere with learning. Oh, this is getting very interesting now. Okay, come on, we want to know details. So in what way were the parents perceived to be interfering with learning? Now, I asked this question in this way, a little bit suspiciously, because I have also had experiences where some teachers have claimed that parents have been interfering with learning, whereas actually really it's been a bit of a culture shock for the teacher to actually have their knowledge, to have their systems questioned. I'm not saying that that's what happened in this situation, but I would be interested to find out more about how that perception came about. Okay, so Valentina, first-hand experience, yeah, okay, and I'm getting the sense here it's great for me to have the opportunity actually to interact with you about these themes, because it's really obvious from the contributions you're making that people are obviously very involved and passionate practitioners in this agenda. Yeah, okay, thank you, Melina. Ah, so Borko. So Borko is saying, I wish they would question my methods. It would mean they started to care. Yes, very interesting. So, I mean, what's obviously emerging here very clearly is, I think, a willingness on. Now, I don't like to think of it in sides, but I think the reality is with family learning, where it has been difficult to implement, it is not so much about the people or the characters, it's very often about two worlds that traditionally have been separate and had a very kind of distanced respect of some sort towards each other, actually needing to engage more with each other. And that is quite a frightening thing for people on both sides, I think. So yeah, that's an interesting thought. Just to say, on the contact slide, you can see there you've got my email address, you've got our company website there, but I am very active on Twitter as well, so it'd be great to interact with you if you are on Twitter, if you wanted to start following me. And we've also got our primary site Twitter tag as well. So how are people finding it so far? We've got 12 minutes left. Is everybody okay? Hoping that means everybody's okay. Okay, Valentina, I'm a language teacher, and when my child was in the 3rd grade, his teacher told me that I should stop working with him and his friends that came to work with me. Valentina, I want to know more. She said I was interfering. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. You see, these are the kind of issues that we face. Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely identify with that. I think what you've described there is one of the many challenges that we have around this. And if we think about digital citizenship, you know, it's you know, many teachers are very skilled. I mean, certainly in England now we have the ICT curriculum in primary schools. So, you know, we've got things like basic coding on the curriculum, which is fantastic, and you have got people enthusiastic. But for example, you know, that is something that for example, governors of schools need to start planning for in terms of that engagement with the school, whether it's in terms of policies or complaints or whatever. The more that people become comfortable and skilled in this, actually that could present challenges to the identity of teachers. So at the start I referred to my online and offline identity. And coming back to that thing about us all being human, absolutely, every teacher in the classroom, just as every pupil, you know, are going to have their own insecurities and fears, as well as their own strengths. Great, thanks, Borka. You've just started following me on Twitter, so I'll look you up. That's great, I'll follow you back. She said, Valentina, it wasn't important for me to know what they worked on at school. That's all I can say. I think as a community, I think we just need to try and stay positive, need to stay ambitious. I think we do have it in us as a society to break down these cultural barriers, to help people feel more comfortable. Yeah, Valentina, that's exactly what I said. It sounds like it's a very good job you and I weren't in the same room with that teacher. But yes, I completely agree with you. So really interested, we've got 9 minutes left, so really interested to learn about what other solutions people think there could be to those kind of barriers, and specifically in terms of the kind of digital communication solutions I've mentioned primary site offer. So, for example, there was research in England from the Department for Education that showed that use of blogging and podcasting could be linked to improved literacy ability. So again, I know within England, you know, that is not something that is consistently happening across schools. Why? Why is it not happening consistently? And that's even when we just think within England. So when we then start looking across the whole of the area that Primary Site covers, and certainly across the whole of Europe, you know, we've got a really big task ahead, but there is loads of good practice there to be shared. You know, and I think we just have to try and stay positive in spite of those kind of challenges that Valentina has described there. Thank you, Valentina. I'll follow you back. I've not run out of things to say. I'm just waiting for the questions. So I'm wondering, this could be of interest to people. Thinking about digital citizenship. One of the things that I was very interested in, looking at the international perspective, was around how we look at digital skills in different countries. So one of the challenges I always put in, not around the PISA data set from OECD, but the PIAC data. Hello Durata from Albania, welcome. And Valentina, that's interesting about your blog site. I'd like to pick that up with you after the webinar. In terms of the PIAC data, so this is the data set internationally about adult skills. One of the issues I always had, as somebody who has dual British Slovak nationality, is that measuring digital competence using measures that are completely culturally inappropriate is really not the way forward. So don't get me wrong, very much of what PIAC records I completely support. I think it's a really excellent data set. Equally, the idea that we would measure ICT competence in the past on clicking a mouse or scrolling in a culture where actually use of mobile devices saturating the telecoms industry has been the exception, the norm, rather than the exception, just doesn't really make sense in terms of driving strategy at that international level. But also, what was very heartening at the European Family Learning Conference was UNESCO, who were also delivering a keynote speech, was this idea that it should be part of the human rights of a child to actually be in a learning environment. Because again, for all of us, what we've heard described is that somehow or other, not even necessarily just agencies or schools, but, you know, families themselves sometimes see it as an added luxury, you know, not something that's required to grow up in a home learning environment. And actually very much the discussion, the presentation that UNESCO was giving was looking at it along the lines of the human rights of a child, in terms of actually being able to have a quality of life that they are entitled to. Okay, so Valentina, wonderful. Thank you for those contact details. And just thinking about additional points, perhaps, which might have cropped up from the discussions. I'm interested, really. I'm not sure whether Alina will be asking for any specific feedback on the webinar, but I am very interested to find out whether this kind of model is running elsewhere. There is a school in Wales that has one of our websites. So they have a primary site website, and it's called Monkton Priory School in Pembrokeshire in Wales, and their head teacher, Shelley Morris, is absolutely visionary in terms of really engaging with the community, offering family learning almost as an entitlement to the families whose children attend that school. You're welcome, Rosetta. I'm glad you found it interesting. That's wonderful. And thank you, Ina. Blog. There is an option for parents as the teacher. That'd be great if you could share the link, please, Ina, to your blog, please. And they have literally had families that are very rurally isolated. They can't drive necessarily always. They don't have regular bus services to a local town, so they can access education at a higher level. And that head teacher has actually enabled a culture, a learning culture in the school where it is the norm that families will actually go in to learn together. And they now have parents that have gone from having no qualifications to working on a foundation degree at university. And the way they've approached that is, rather than expecting those parents that have many challenges in their life, rather than expecting them to overcome all their multiple barriers and challenges to get to the university, that school leader enabled there to be a tutor visiting to actually teach that foundation degree course. I mean, how visionary is that? And I know it is a big ask for that to happen everywhere, but you know, it only takes a few schools with that kind of vision and the commitment to make that happen. You know, we can make this a reality, especially with the digital communications. I mean, it's never been more possible for us to do this. And some really lovely comments on the chat. Thank you, Elena. I'm really glad you've got some new ideas to think about, and I'd be really interested, you know, to hear more about those and what you end up implementing. So we're in the last 3 minutes of the webinar now, so it's really lovely to be getting feedback at this stage from people. And just in terms of my own thinking and follow-up, I'd be really interested, are there particular aspects that you have really found especially useful? Are there particular aspects that you don't think I've done a good job at, that you think I could have said more about? Because if so, you know, I'm more than happy to provide other information. Really welcome your views and your thoughts. Thank you, Ina. Thank you, Valentina. Thank you, Anna. Glad you found it interesting. Thank you, Stavrula. Great, Valentina, thank you. That is starting family learning in Macedonia. What an opportunity. That's great. And we're just in the last 2 minutes, and I can see Alina's appeared on the screen. I'd just like to leave you really with an anecdote that I was told last week by somebody from Save the Children Northern Ireland, which they'd come across in their research one of their research projects, which I really thought, you know, however long you work in family learning, sometimes seeing these families is really important to remember the impact you have. One researcher asked a child, what would you like to be when you grow up? And the child said, an iPad. And the parent said, the researcher said, why an iPad? And the child said, because then my parent will listen to me. Then my parent will take notice of me. So lots of opportunities, but we have a real challenge. Thank you so much for listening, and thanks for the opportunity, Alina.
Thank you, Susanna. That was very full 90 minutes of information and inspiration, examples, and very good conversation. So thank you so much for being our expert. And I hope all the listeners, all the participants found source of inspiration and information from this webinar. So as mentioned in the beginning, on the School Education Gateway, we've been highlighting the topic family learning this month. So we have there Susanna's article, but we have also a few other articles. So if you have time, please do visit the website. And you can also, you're of course welcome to visit in other occasions too. So thank you once again, Susanna. Thank you all the participants.
Thank you to everybody for sharing their experiences as well. Thank you.